I call to order the Lynchburg Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, May 11th, 2022. The first order of business is the approval of our April 27th minutes. Are there any additions or corrections? Has everybody had a chance to look through them?
That's good.
I move to approve the minutes.
All right.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Great. Next order of business is the following new business. We're going to hear consideration of the petition of Spring Hill Cemetery Association for conditional use permit at 1550 James Street to allow the construction of a columbarium, access road to Stadium Road, and establish new cemetery plots in an R3 medium-density residential district. Tom, I assume you'll be there.
Planning Commission, I think you covered it very well in your opening remarks. The cemetery has been in existence since at least the 1850s. This would just allow for an expansion of columbarium and burial plots, as well as an egress road that would be used during services to Stadium Road. The property is zoned for, it's zoned R3, but it's recommended for institutional uses on the future land use map. We do not foresee any issues with this and recommend approval.
Okay, thank you.
I have done business with Spring Hill, and they advertise in my magazine, but I think I can be objective on this unless anybody has a problem with that.
Okay, that's fine with me.
I actually take one of my labs there to do some demographic work, but I can certainly.
No voting on you.
No,
Okay.
a bunch of relatives there. They didn't say anything
Right,
to
that's
me that
enough.
they objected to, so.
Okay, well, who's here to speak on behalf of this petition? If you'd come forward, please sign your name there at the podium and then state your name and tell us a little bit more about the project.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Justin Fournier with Balzer & Associates, here to represent Spring Hill Cemetery Association. As described, we're essentially just expanding on the existing columbarium that is there now, and as well as doing additional columbarium walls immediately adjacent to it, with some additional traditional plots and a cremation garden as well. The only thing that I would add to is we are also showing a connection to James Street. Just for both of those roads, just so you know, they will be gated and they're only to be used for funeral services in that area as people exit. There will be no entry through those, it's exit only. The style of architecture is going to match what's out there today, hopefully improve a little bit on it, do some repairs to the existing columbarium wall as well. Be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. And you might just stay put. Is there anybody here to speak on behalf of this? I don't see any opposition. Anybody opposed?
I have some questions. I live at 1540 Blackburn Street.
Okay, well, if you want to come forward, you could have a seat. If you want to come forward and make comment.
It's not really a comment, it's just, so I can just ask you.
Well, no, if you can come forward, please, because we want to get that on the recording, and just state your name and sign there, and then we'll work with you on addressing those.
I'm not really opposed to anything. I just have some questions because my property is behind James Street on Blackburn Street. And they have slowly bought up all the little houses on my part of Blackburn and torn them down. Why haven't you made me an offer? Don't know. Y'all haven't been knocking me.
And but could you state your name? please,
Stephen
for-
Collins,
Mr. Collins, great. thank you.
1540 Blackburn Street, Lynchburg, Virginia. So it says medium-density residential district, which I guess is what I am, and new cemetery plots. Will those new cemetery plots be on the hill where you're slowly filling up with landfill and debris? Or will that be directly behind my house on Blackburn Street on that stretch of James Street? Is that street going to be closed off like the other, like Reeves was? And what else did I want to ask? The columbarium you want to add to what's already there, it's going to be kind of like a mirror on one side looking at the other? Is that kind of how that's going to be? Yeah. At one time when the first columbarium was built, there was talk of putting a little dome over both sides and making like a little chapel. Is that in the works, or is that not still going to be like an outside columbarium? Not closed in completely? Okay. And
I
then,
just want to reiterate, you were questioning about a street, because I'm worried that people might not have heard. Had you were worried about a street being closed off?
yes, because
Rive Street?
Rive Street
Yeah.
was closed off, and they've got big gates there. You can't go through there anymore.
Right, okay,
The last time they came down and needed something,
okay,
which was fine, and we've gotten used to that. But Lancaster to Fort Avenue is nothing but a roller coaster. And then when you close that little section between the old cemetery and the new part of the cemetery, it caused quite a backlash. You know, I don't know if y'all realize it because you don't live in that area. You work in that area, but you didn't live in that area when that little section between the old and new was closed off. Is James Street, which is a one-way street down to the church in Stadium Road, is that going to be a two-way street now? Is that going to be closed off as well?
so, yeah, so if you just, any other questions, then we'll get them to come up and answer all those questions. That's why I wanted you to reiterate what you had said.
And then you're going to want to plot off new plots. Is that going to be on James Street behind my street on Blackburn, or is that going to be on another section?
All right. So you're questioning about the plots on James Street, would they be
They're
behind
saying
your
they're going
house,
to
because you're on
new
Blackburn?
plots. Is that going to be on the James
Okay.
Street that borders behind Blackburn Street where I live? That's
Okay.
what I'm curious.
Right, okay,
Because that doesn't explain that on the letter, just that they want to expand, and they have new plots. but not
Sure.
Where the plots will be.
okay. Well, let's, you can have a seat, and if you have more questions, I'll call you again if you want to address those here. Mr. Fournier?
Okay. I guess, so to answer the first question about the closure of James Street, no, that's still a city street right now, but we are not closing anything on James Street. We will be having an exit road that ties into James Street that will be gated, so there won't be the ability for general public to go in and out except for on a service when they're leaving. And it only services down on this side of the cemetery, not if it's somewhere else on the property. As far as the additional plots that we're talking about, it's really kind of, is that showing up on there? Yeah, so it's more in this area, kind of to, to the right side of the existing columbarium.
So that would be on the other side of James Street towards Gordon versus Blackburn.
Correct, and,
Okay.
and there's already, I believe, approval for additional plots between James Street and the inside road there that connects to the columbarium. So that we're not really asking permission for that right now. We're just kind of more or less asking for permission for additional columbariums.
Right.
And plots on this side.
Yeah, and I think Mr. Collins' concern was that there's not as many houses now along the 1500 block of James on the other side, and I think that was
Correct.
one of the things he was concerned about.
Yeah, we're not doing anything on this side of James Street
Okay,
at all with this petition.
great.
And he did say James Street would stay open. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah,
So you're not going to close James Street?
No,
And this is the part that you're going to do new plots, is that correct?
yes, within that highlighted area, but yeah, to the right of the existing columbarium as you're looking at it right now. So in that cyan border.
So this section that runs behind my property is not being touched at this time, maybe 10 years down the road, you might want to expand that area.
Correct. That's not part of this petition at all, no.
That wasn't explained in the letter where the new plots would be. That's why I came
Understood.
here. I wasn't sure about me opening my back door and saying good morning to more friends and relatives that are already laying over there.
Right.
So my little house and the property behind it, as of right now, there will be no new plots.
Correct.
Street, James is staying open, and this is the triangle that's new plots will be.
Correct.
Is that correct? Okay, that's all I need to know, is I just.
Switch back to the other first picture. That way it shows the layout of that.
Right, right.
Yeah, you notice, you can see how the existing columbarium is, and,
This is the existing right here,
yeah,
and then this is all the proposed area through here.
And the new access road, does that mean you're just gonna open that gate that's been closed 2 years with a chain? Or are you actually gonna put in a new entrance off of James to that section? Because I don't see how you could with all the graves along that fence from James Street.
that access road to the bottom of James Street, will only be open when we have a service right in that area, so cars can exit, then turn right, then turn on the Stadium Road, left, and then turn on Stadium Road. It's just an exit.
And it will be in the same location of where that gate is today. It'll just be improved.
Great.
And
I don't,
the gate that exists right now on Stadium Road behind the columbarium, it's got brick columns. We keep that closed until we have a service, so that then traffic can exit out of the cemetery at that point. Likewise, the proposed gate at the very eastern part would be the same way.
if you have more comments, if you want to come up here and also put your name down and state your name so we can get on the public record, that would be great.
Do you want business telephone or personal? Business phone, right?
Business is
Is it
fine.
fine? Yeah.
Okay.
And never actually looked at the list to see what information's on. I always just say, put your name and state your name.
I'm Ames Powers. I live at 105 Bennington Drive here in Lynchburg. I'm Secretary Treasurer of Spring Hill Cemetery. And I don't know what other additional questions y'all have with regards to that.
Yeah, I think you pointed out, when you were there, you pointed out pretty well about the entrance and the exit. And,
Yes.
and I think you addressed, as Mr. Collins was looking at the screen, any other questions. I just want to make sure that your name was on the public record,
Sure.
so.
And is that all the questions he had? Does that address everything?
Yeah, do you feel like that fairly covered everything, Mr. Collins?
I think so, because like I said, the letter did not distinguish
Right.
where the new plots would be, and I thought maybe you measure out, right them out.
Right.
But according to the color map, if you go back to the color map, the other issue up there.
Yeah, I think the point is, if you're going to be having these conversations, since this is videoed, they can't be heard when they're back in the audience.
Right.
So that's why we request that they come up.
Yeah, right there. So what's in the blue, that's pretty much where all the work's gonna be done.
That's correct.
Yeah, so everything in the blue is where all the work is. Where it goes down into a corner, there's plots in there, which is on one of the slides we just showed, and then there is an exit on James Street, and there's an entrance on the other side of the project. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
They're both exits, aren't they?
Oh, they might be both exits, yeah.
there'll be an exit right here, and then an exit right up here.
Okay. Yeah, I think we've covered all those questions. And I don't see anybody else here to speak on that, so I think we'll close the public hearing, and then I'm sure there's some questions here from the front.
I don't have any questions. It looks pretty straightforward to me.
No questions.
I guess my only question is really the original entrance on Stadium, will that be used ever, or is that going to be?
For the existing entrance on Stadium, we keep the gates closed, simply because when they first built it, they realized that people start cutting through the cemetery as a cut through. So we keep the gates closed now until we have a service at that end, so that we line the cars up. And so after the funeral, we can open the gates, the cars can exit the cemetery without, because once you get everybody on there, you have 30 or 40 cars. If you don't do it that way, then you have a real mess of trying to get people to back up and turn around and that sort of thing. So the logic behind those other two drives is the very same thing. If you notice, we're putting a cul-de-sac and for just normal visitation, where there'd be 1 or 2 cars that can turn around and come back out. But once you get a service in there with 30 or 40 cars, then we would have an interior gate that we would open, and then as well as the gate at the end on Stadium, so that cars then could file out and proceed out on Stadium Road.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions. I was more curious about
Well,
that.
I do have one question. I see you have a gate at the cul-de-sac. Do you have a gate at the new road that goes to James Street, on the side next to the columbarium, to keep people from going down that road and then getting stopped? Yeah,
We will.
yeah. And you have one on
Right.
the one that goes out to Stadium, I guess.
Right.
Okay.
We'll have gates. We have gates at all perimeters, as well as an interior gate, but the interior gate's only gonna be like a pole gate that you would have like at a National Forest type gate that we can just swing open so that people then can access that road on the inside of the cemetery.
I just been looking at this picture here.
If you want to come back forward one more time,
Well,
because we can't.
That's around the blue line that runs across my property. Is that the 250 feet? Is that why I got the letter? Is that what that is?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I want to know. I was just taking, looking at that red line running across my property, wondering what that was. That was the reason the letter came to that. Okay.
Okay.
I'm ready to make a motion to accept the petition as submitted.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All right. So seconded. Any other comment before we put it to a vote? All right. Let's go ahead and vote. All in favor of the petition as written, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Nay? All right, great, and good luck. I know you'll go into City Council. Mr. Collins, thank you for coming. It's important that citizens come, and if you have more questions or want to discuss it more, there will be a hearing at City Council as well.
Tom,
Thank you for your time.
before you leave that, can you scroll up to the zoning map, please? Yeah. Just, if you don't mind, as we segue to the next item, because we are talking institutional, I was just curious about City Stadium being on institutional with that parking lot in R3. Was that all done through a CUP as well?
City Stadium is across the street, which I believe isn't this the City Stadium?
No, it's gonna be to the left, isn't it?
Well, there's a zoning map on up further.
That's what he's, that's,
Well,
yeah, it's R3 and I3. The parking lot is R3, where the bank is.
oh, I mean,
I'm not sure if I agree with you on that. Let's do something else.
I think that's industrial, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not institutional,
no,
the
it's
industrial.
institution. I mean, the flume is.
Institution is
I'm just looking at the color blue, and it says institution.
Yeah, the parcel view is not working.
It's not.
No, I've been trying to get to it. I was gonna mention that at the end. Anyway, I just, since we're talking about the same type of issue with activities, I was just curious about the city stadium. It just seems to be a similar situation. Oh, you did get it to work.
So City Stadium is right here, right?
Yeah.
Never use this one.
Well, that's okay. We don't need to delay things for this. Yeah, it might answer itself.
So, yes, it's zoned R3, correct, okay. Has been since at least 1978. So what is,
So it's a giant parking lot at a stadium.
right,
That's allowed?
it's been there for so long, it's probably, well, a couple of reasons. One is it's non-conforming because it's been there for so long.
Right.
Two, and I know we don't like to talk about it, but the city is exempt from its own ordinance. So since it's public property, it can put the use there.
Okay,
Right.
I was just curious.
And also remember, the institutional zones didn't exist.
Right.
Right.
Okay, all right, thanks.
But on the flume, as I believe Ms. Marion was pointing out,
It's public,
you see it's recommended for institutional use.
Good.
public use.
Yeah.
not institutional.
Well, the stadium is public, but the cemetery is institutional.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you.
Did you state your name and sign? Okay, we ready to move on to the next one? Great. Next, we'll hear the petition of Liberty University, Inc. for a conditional use permit at 1120 Hershey Espinjay Drive and 701 Mountain View Road to allow the construction of an outdoor stadium with approximately 4,121 seats in an IN2 institutional district.
So, members of Planning Commission, this property is zoned institutional. The area is recommended for institutional and community commercial uses on the future land use map. A petition to allow a 6,000-seat stadium was approved by council on March the 14th of 2017, yet that CUP was allowed to expire. This current petition proposes a somewhat smaller facility, only 4,121 seats. The stadium would still be lighted. Since the proposal is less than originally approved, the city engineer did not require a new traffic study. Although our concern with this petition is the same as the last one, and that is the intersection of Mountain View Road and Candler's Mountain Road. Essentially, the intersection today, you can make straight across movements or left turn movements. What we have conditioned as part of the last approval and is recommended as a condition of approval for this one and agreed to by the petitioner and shown on the concept plan is that that intersection be modified. So it would only allow right in and right out movements during normal operations, but it would have bollards that could be taken out to allow full turning movements if traffic control measures were in place, university police. Very similar. I would like to point out one thing that's not on the concept plan. It really wouldn't require a conditional use permit anyway, but there is an additional parking area proposed for buses. They just told me about that today, but it really has no bearing on this petition. So we do recommend approval of the conditional use permit as submitted.
Great, thank you. Who is here to speak on behalf of this petition? Good, if you want to, as you've heard, sign your name and state your name and tell us a little bit more.
Okay, my name is Dan Dieter. I'm the Vice President of Construction at Liberty University, and I'm here to tell you about the new Lca Stadium. As Tom said, it's very similar to the one we brought a few years ago. That one was larger. For a lot of different reasons, we decided to hold on that, and the project has gotten kind of dusted back off, and we shrunk it a little bit. Its main purpose in life is to give LCA its own home. I mean, right now LCA shares a lot of Liberty facilities, and as Liberty steps up into the upper athletic leagues, we have Virginia Tech coming to campus this year, and we're very excited to host them in football. The one thing that we're seeing a lot of scheduling conflicts where a team like Virginia Tech will come in on a Friday and they'll want the field the night before the game so they can do their walkthroughs and get used to it. And it's really hard when we tell a team like Virginia Tech that, we can't let you be on the field because we're having a high school football game there. So there's just a lot of reasons that this makes sense to proceed with now. And, we've kind of scaled it back a little bit. It's not going to just be for football. It's going to be for all LCA sports. We've specifically designed the locker rooms to be used for both female sports and male sports. So we're not trying to dial this in just for football. We're trying to dial it in for all sports and marching band. As Tom said, we do have to do a little bit of a satellite bus parking lot because right now the buses are parked kind of where the new stadium goes. So we're going to kind of push them out a little bit. And overall, we're just excited about getting started on the project. So happy to answer questions.
Thank you. And did you want to make any comment?
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, there's no one here else to speak, so we'll go ahead and close public hearing, and you can just stay here if there's any questions.
Okay.
Can I assume that the parking shown on the concept plan is existing parking, or is that going to be expanded
So
over what you already have?
the parking on the east side is existing parking now. It'll be reconfigured to add ADA spaces to the entrance, and so it basically has to be relayed out that way. We're also losing like 2 or 3 spaces to create a new entrance. There is new parking being proposed on the west side, and that will be more for coaches and officials and the visiting team bus. And the way we've set up the stadium is we've got the visitors on the west side, the home team on the east side, and then we keep the officials there's a building in the southeast corner. So a little bit of new parking on the west, but nothing new on the east.
And then, just to clarify one comment you made, because I missed it in the description, this will be solely for LCA, or this be used for, what I got was it was going to be a kind of an overflow field for Liberty as well?
No.
Not
This will be
true.
all for LCA.
All
We'll
for
get them
LCA.
out of all of our stuff. Like, they won't be having games at the stadium. They won't be using our track because right now they use our track for outdoor track events. So they'll have their own track. They'll have their own football field, lacrosse field. We've got an area for the marching band to practice. And, we're really trying to keep LCA, more of a typical high school like Jefferson Forest and a lot of the other high schools around the area. So.
I just missed that point when you spoke, so I appreciate the clarification.
I don't have any questions.
I remember discussing this extensively the first time it came through, and I was going to ask for the minutes, but it was so late in the game I didn't want to trouble people with that. But I think a lot of our concerns were addressed then, and part of our discussion was how well Liberty handles their events. I mean, I can't expect that many people coming to a Virginia Tech game. If they do show up, Liberty's shown that they can handle that. And so I don't think that's going to be an issue. I know that Candler's Mountain Road is scheduled for some overhauls by VDOT, right? I don't think this is going to be influenced by that at all.
I'm not sure of the timing of it. I could check into that for you.
But I think that's still removed from all of this.
Yes.
Yeah, so, I mean, and there were some traffic issues discussed, but it sounds like the go ahead.
I was just going to say the entrance modifications that they're proposing satisfy the city staff.
Yeah.
Another thing too, for me, I thought about traffic, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is basically reshuffling the traffic we were seeing anyway. So it's not like, we're introducing a whole new squad of people to come in. The people that used to show up over here are now going to show up over here. And with the exception of the fact that they'd be coming off of Candler's Mountain Road, I hope that new entrance is going to take care of that. It seems like y'all have thought about that, Tom.
Well, yes, essentially it's just taking the event from the main stadium now and moving it to the new stadium. One of the things we did discuss when this came forward in 2017 was, now they could do 2 large events at one time, yet as Commissioner Peralt stated, Thomas Road, Liberty, LCA, they all pretty much handle the traffic conditions on their own. They've had some very large events, and I haven't heard of any complaints. So they do a very good job of managing traffic on their campus.
To me, it's going to be easier to get in and out of this facility than it is the main stadium, if anything. But, I know that was our big concern back in 2017 was the traffic, but to me, I think it's going to improve the traffic flow, personally, just because you're not having people going to the heart of the campus to the football stadium so much.
Well, yeah, and in fairness, over time, they have done so many improvements to that area. If you look just the connection to Ward's Road, the ring road around the campus. They've really put a lot of thought and effort into how traffic flows on their campus, and it's been working very well.
That's the first time I've been out there in a long time, and I was just amazed at how much you all had, period. When I think about what I used to go to out there just a few years ago and what's been added, some of which we've sat on, but a lot of it, it's different seeing it up close.
Yeah, I guess I should have said at the beginning of the presentation, I am an adjunct faculty member of the law school, but really I saw this as an LCA issue, not so much as a liberty issue, so I don't think it's influencing my...
Well, I guess I should say I went to LCA years ago. So I remember actually going to football practices where Walmart is right now, when it was a swamp. So I think it's a great improvement. I'm not involved with the school anymore, but I understand with my kids how important it is to have a nice facility. So I think it's really neat. It looks like there's going to be plenty of ingress and egress also down the back along by the tennis courts. People will be able to exit a lot of different ways. So I think it's a neat addition for the students.
If there's no further discussion, I would move that we accept the proposal as stated with the conditions that Tom put on it.
Second.
All right, well, before we put a vote, any other comments? All right, all in favor of this petition as written? Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right, great, passes. You'll get to go to city council and they'll probably be playing, if it passes, they'll be playing football next fall probably on it, because stuff happens like that sometimes, so. All right, thank you very much.
Before Tech comes to town.
Yeah, really, that's the truth, yeah.
How fast can you go?
How awkward, yeah, that would be awkward. It's like, what? Sorry, the high school's here. All right, so do we have any other further business? I have a couple things that we can discuss. Since we had the nice little open mic conversation at the last meeting, and I'm assuming the mic's still on, I got a call from Norm Walton And, we've had, I know when I was here early, we had a meeting talking about, for example, highway plans and traffic. We've had the Parks and Rec people, and Norm was wondering if it was appropriate to have an engineer come in for a sit-down and just spend a little bit of time discussing how they develop plans. He said he felt like with traffic, there is sometimes some confusion, and, there were some things said, that, I think from both this table and the presenter that probably didn't, jive very well with some of the things he's seen. And so, I think we're all familiar with him, and I think it would be an interesting, interesting thing. So I said I would pose that in today's meeting.
So, sure. The Planning Commission can obviously have discussions with whomever they like. I tell you one thing that staff is going to start doing again is a while back we used to have these developer forums where we brought developers in and talked about our processes. I think it is perfectly reasonable if the Planning Commission wants to talk to any of the engineering firms just to talk about, how they develop their traffic studies or plans or, whatever. There's a lot that goes into it that you may not necessarily see. So if you want to schedule that, I'd be happy to work with Mr. Walton on that. Also, I was going to point out, which is kind of related to that somewhat, is the budget that was passed did include funding to update our comprehensive plan. So we will be starting that process. I hope you got one more in you. So.
Dave won't be here.
I think I'm still on.
Yeah. So
Did they approve a stipend for us while we do that?
you get a free parking place, right?
That's true.
I definitely support that, if that's what we're waiting on. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
And tell me one more time about, so you guys are talking about bringing developers in to explain your process? Is it separate from this meeting kind
Oh,
of?
it'd be totally separate from this, but just so that there is, we have conversations with them ongoing anyway about projects, but really more or less to talk about, any issues that they're seeing with ordinances or is there anything we can do to improve?
Because I've been pretty impressed with, by the time we get it, I feel like most of the stuff has been ironed out of it.
Typically, that's what we all strive for, yes.
But I'd also like to know what some of that, not that I want to check behind, I just don't think I have enough appreciation for what you guys do before it gets there. And I think in talking the other day to the situation on Gray's Mill, there's a lot of, I'm gonna call it smoke and mirrors, because I just don't understand how it works.
So sure. So maybe what we could do is when we bring Mr. Walton in, provided the commission wants to do that, is I could give you an overview of our process, what happens prior to you seeing it, and then have a conversation with him about traffic studies and those types of things, because I believe that was one of his primary concerns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that'd be great. Yeah, they're, one of the things that I do agree, we get people who come with plans that are really well vetted, and I think planning staff gives a lot of help, and there are times when developers don't necessarily follow that path, and so getting them engaged more maybe that'll be helpful on some of that. So.
Well, I will say over the course of my career, typically the developers and staff work very well with one another. We don't always agree, and Russ can tell you that, and that's fine. Yet it's very few instances where you'll see staff recommending denial of something because we've kind of come to consensus before it gets here,
Right.
which is what we strive for.
Right. Well, that'd be great. And I think if we can do it over the summer, which is, maybe we'll have less things going on. I know there's certainly less things in my life, but that brings up the other thing. We have vacations. So I think that we need to make sure that we're all letting staff know when we're going to be gone or if we're going to be gone. can't take too many vacations.
One quick comment about the traffic. I welcome that training. I can certainly benefit from it. But, you know, like today's report petition was very specific and was useful. Talked about loss of service, what it is, what's going to happen, what's being done to address it. And we don't always get that. We often get, there was a traffic study done, we don't have to worry about it. And so I like the comparison of today's versus what we often get. So I welcome going into that discussion, because traffic is always a concern with every petition.
Well, see, that's a very good point. You know, I will say if traffic impact analysis are required, we always provide them in the as attachments. What I'm hearing you say is it would be beneficial to include some type of summary within the Planning Commission report.
Yep, that 3-paragraph summary was really nice today.
That's helpful. Yeah.
Versus a 35-page report.
Yeah.
Well, I think the issue is just the gray area between what's analyzed, you know, and what you're adding up with your fingers trying to figure out how the car, you know, how the traffic is going to relate to cars and to traffic. I think it's just I don't know that it's just a gray area that would, some paragraphs, that summary helped to sort of span that for me and bring it sort of out of the background to something I can understand. So use short words, please.
It's gotten complex and it's gotten kind of beyond the realm of just a site engineer. And I think when Norm and I watched the video, what we were concerned about was there was some thoughts on the commission that every traffic report that comes says it's okay. And it seemed like you guys thought because every traffic report ends with saying it's okay, but it doesn't. You guys don't see any of the traffic reports that say you can't do this because we never get this far.
Right.
A bunch of them say you just can't get the levels of service, and so we just don't do the project.
That is true, and Mr. Orson works at the same firm.
Right. Yeah, I had a good conversation with Norm, so that was nice to talk to him. So yeah, we'll plan that for this summer. If any other business or any other questions?
Move we adjourn.
That counts as a motion to me, and a second. All right.
Thank you all.
Have a good day.